All right, so
This meeting is being recorded.
it's official now. So welcome everyone to our last um, OTA. This week, Pat Ross is going to do a training on communication. I mean, communication is such a big part of basketball. Not only you're communicating with your partners verbally and non-verbally, but you're communicating with the coaches and the players and all that kind of stuff out there. So communicating is a big one, and you really want to make sure you're doing it well. I know one of the big ones that most people don't think of is your voice. A lot of times is that whistle in your mouth. So making sure, I know I've talked about it in other ones, making sure you blow that whistle good and blow hard. So, but I'll let Pat kind of dive in here to communication, and yeah, bring any questions you have here at the end. And all right, Pat, it's all you.
All right, thank you, Jay. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And a lot of people, I sent out the topic, a little bit of an outline of what I was going to talk about, and I got a lot of feedback from fellow officials. I was sitting there. I told you this. I was sitting there. Didn't look like anyone's really signing up for communicating. So I said to my wife, I said, "Hey, what do you think? Should I, am I a good communicator?" And you guys heard this before. She just kind of, you talk about body language, nonverbal communication. She kind of rolled her eyes. And, if you read the script, it said, yeah, you're a good communicator. But the way she said it, it's not always what you say, it's also how you say it. She's like, oh, yeah, you're a great communicator. So I took that as a challenge. So here we go. And if you guys have any questions anywhere along the line, please jump in. Or if you have any input, and that's from anybody, or if you say something, you have any questions at all, please feel free to jump in. And I'm not so sure this will take the full time, but yeah, there's a little bit of the outline.
Yeah.
Thank you. And also, I always give my disclaimer. Like when I'm officiating or after a game, if I see anybody at all that's an official, I ask them for their input, and then I take what I like out of their feedback and use it for me. So I always give this disclaimer when I give you information. You may like doing something a different way than what I'm going to talk about, but I'm always open. Listen to what other people have to say, and then take what you want from this speech, this talk, and take what fits in your game, and you can use it. I think that the important thing as an official, the keys are you have to support each other, be a team, be on the same page. And if we have disagreements, we don't show those on the court after when you look at film, that type of thing. That's when you can be a little critical of each other. I know Heather's on here, and I had the privilege, the pleasure of working with her on some games. Hi, Heather. And district games. And after our game was over, uh, Josh Boltby, we did 2 district games again. And we went back and forth about different scenarios and sent clips out and all that type of thing, just discussing what went on and communicating that way. So I think it's support, like I said, support each other. And then you can agree to disagree at times and see what people see. You might have seen something differently. I always ask somebody, hey, what did you see there? And if they describe something the way they saw it, they may have made the right call. Maybe I saw it differently. So sometimes we have to agree to disagree. Another thing Jerry Novak said, especially to the younger people here, focus on just a few things each game. It would be easy to become overwhelmed. Like I'm going to try to throw some different things out here at you. Maybe store those or maybe keep this outline, or you can refer back to the recording, but don't get yourself overwhelmed by all that type of stuff. All right. As a former teacher here, I got to talk definition of communication is exchange of information. It was a nice short definition. Communication, I think, is really important with your mentor. You'll be assigned. Do you guys all have mentors? Does everyone have mentors or someone that they can communicate with? If not, you will be assigned one. I know when I started, they just replaced peach baskets with the orange ring. So we didn't have any mentor. We didn't have any program set up. I know Tim Bartholomew, rest in peace, a heck of a basketball official, but he was a friend that I knew, and I'd contact him when I had questions on things that were happening. So you should have a mentor. and feel free, if you feel comfortable, there's so many good officials out there that really want to help you, that are willing, reach out to those guys whenever you can. Another aspect, communication, is with the assigner. I know you hear this before. Keep your arbiter up to date for all the assigners, for the travel and the Paroka League and all that good stuff. The other thing is, I know Rick, at the end of the day after games, if anything really bad happened, or you had to toss people, or technical fouls or fights or things like that, or any conflict with a coach or player, he always likes you to communicate with him, give him a heads up as far as what happened, so he doesn't get blindsided. And moving along here, the types of communication, there's verbal, it's what you say, and also the paralytic version, or how you said it. I think that was in Philly Ref. I read an article on that, and they talked about the two things. It's just like I said with my wife, someone can say good call and mean it, or they can say, oh yeah, it was a good call. It's the way you communicate. When you are communicating with players, coaches, or anyone else, you should be direct. Try to be concise, firm, fair, calm. And I like to be kind of a nice person, but let them know that you're going to manage the game with things that are going on. Nonverbal communication, your body language. And one thing Brian Schoaf mentioned, which I didn't have written down, when you're in certain scenarios, like when you're covering your area of the floor, turn and be facing that area. Another thing I'll do, I give myself self-talk. When you're on your third travel game over at the Nook, and you're kind of just watching the game, and you maybe start to space out, talk to yourself, say, hey, all right, I'm the lead official. This is my area, turn, and I'm looking toward that. And I know as officials, when you work 3-person crews, if the trail's turn and facing a matchup, then the other officials to see in the trail know, hey, they have that matchup, so I'm looking at the area that I'm supposed to be responsible for. And the same thing's true with the 2-man. So I will talk to myself. Visual, we use visual for so much. You're looking at the scoreboard, you're aware of the foul situation, you're aware of the score, you're aware of the time on the clock, because sometimes clocks go berserk. And listening. I don't want to miss listening too. Josh Bolpe said something to me about, he said, mention listening. He's found himself maybe a lot of times talking and not listening to what a coach or a player is saying. Take time to listen and understand what they're trying to say or what they're trying to talk to you about. The people we communicate to, I already mentioned our assigners and our mentors. When you're dealing with a game, you'll be talking to the game management people, obviously your fellow officials, and that includes the table people. And remind them that they are part of the officiating crew. Players communicate with, coaches, and even the fans you also communicate with. All right. I was hoping to make this kind of interactive, and I don't know if I throw a bone out here. I got a Dairy Queen. All right. And I hope Jay's on there. I hope I saw him blank his screen. Somebody needs to keep score. I was going to let you guys, if you buzz in, the newer officials buzz in with an answer. Whoever has the most points gets this.
I'm still here, Pat. I'll keep score.
All right, you keep score. And for the newer officials, it's 2 points. And the veterans, like Heather, I know she's a big ice cream. And I see Bronner there. They'll probably want to jump right in there. You guys got to wait. There's like a 30-second pause on you guys, and you only get 1 point. A lot of these questions too, I don't know. There isn't really, there may not be a right or wrong answer. I think the only thing I want to say about communication, I think it crosses so many lines. It ties in with game management and our, we've already had the presentation. Joe Bleacher does a great job with mechanics, and that's all part of the communication scheme. So I'm trying not to spend too much time on this. I thought I'd maybe try to throw out some scenarios and ask you what you would do. So, all right, scenario number 1. And these things are that I've either observed or have happened to me. All right, so you're going to your game. It's 3:30. You have a 4 o'clock game. You get on 222. You go about a half a mile, and traffic is dead stopped. Okay, what are you going to do?
I'm going to call my fellow coaches, or excuse me, my fellow officials, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm hoping I make it, but it's not looking good right now. I'll be there as soon as I can.
2 points. Keep score.
Yes, I love Derek.
And I can't tell who that was, Jay. So are you keeping score, Jay? I don't want to keep you up if you're watching the football game, though.
Yep, I'm keeping score. All I'm doing is laundry in the background, so I'm here keeping score now.
Okay, that's
I got
good.
Bob Rush for 2.
Okay.
I love Dairy Queen, Jay, so don't mess this up for me, okay?
All right. Hey, and the other thing is I think it's a good idea. I typically, to be honest with you, I don't know if Heather or Mike, if you do, I typically don't reach out or call all the people I'm working with. Now, there's some scenarios, like if you do district games or that type of thing, but typically I don't always call everybody. If I think I'm going to be pushed for time for like the reason that happened to me, or, you know, if something comes up at work, I think it's a good idea to give a person a call and say, hey, I might be running real tight, real close. And then typically, if you would call me and tell me that, usually what I do, and again, you guys can give me feedback whether you think it's a good idea, not a good idea, but I'll talk to the coaches at the 4 o'clock game. If I don't have to be anywhere, I'll say, hey, my partner's stuck in traffic here. Do you want to start the game at 4, or would you prefer to wait until, you know, my partner gets here as far as starting the game? You got Heather, Mike, do you have anything you do that, or Jay, or feel one way or another strongly about that?
I mean, I do, but I do it only because I'm coming from Philadelphia a lot of times. So if it's someone I don't know, I will just let them know, like, hey, I hope to be here by 3:45, but I'll communicate if I'm running late. And that's only me because I know where I'm going, where I'm coming from. But to your point, Pat, I mean, in Arbiter, if you're using the mobile app, there's a button. If you click on your game that says text partner, and you just hit a button, it'll bring that person's phone number right up into your text message, and it makes it so much easier too.
Yeah, and that's what I did because I was working with Tom Hillen, and I said, I got stopped dead on 222, and then I got to a place, turned around, went 272. It was the same thing. I never got there. It was 3:30, but I let them and I let the game, you know, the game manager there know that, hey, I'm in traffic. I'm going to try to make it, and we'll see what happens. Okay. When you get to the game side, I always try to establish a rapport with everybody, like game management, because they're going to handle the fan issues if you have any issues. And I always try to thank them in advance. Joe went through the pregame. When possible, give yourself a good pregame, especially if you're doing a varsity game or something else. I know sometimes junior high and JV, it's really tough. During that pregame, you know, if you can include players' abilities, if you know what offense they're going to run, or strategies, or the coaches, you know, talk about the coaches. They're easy to work with, a little bit tough to work with, that type of thing. If you can't do that, and again, I'll throw this out to you. With 3-person, it's a little bit nicer because you can roam around. Like, I'll definitely 3-person, but we usually have a real good pregame. So I'll walk up and down and talk to my partners during warm-ups and make sure we check the equipment, catch anything, you know, early. Also, you know, we'll talk about players' skills. Like in a junior high game, I might still mosey down if it's only 2 of us and talk to my partner and you know, see what they're seeing. All right, this is an easy one, scenario number 2, but I would like you to approach us and speak to us like you're talking to me as a coach or talking to us as a coach, okay? So here's the deal. You're out. You're in charge of supervising the visiting team. When they're warming up, you notice they have dark blue jerseys on, yellow trim, and they have nice gold headbands. Looks really nice, sharp, matches the outfit. But according to rule, what are the colors for headbands? Black, white, beige, predominant color of the uniform. So that isn't the predominant color of the uniform. All right. So if anybody wants to jump in, how do you approach the coach? What are you going to say? Go ahead.
I would just say, Coach, looks like we may have a little violation here of the uniform rules. According by rule, your headbands are not allowed. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to take those off.
That's 2. And maybe I should give an excellent. If it's an excellent, I might go up with a 3 if I really think it's above and beyond excellent. And here's one other thing. I'm kind of a schmoozer, so I'd go up. I'd probably first say, "Hey, coach, how you doing?" I'd kind of throw up and see if he says anything. I'd say, "Hey, this is fashion police. I got a little fashion police issue here. Headbands, white, beige, black." I try to schmooze it. As we talk later, I think I'm more of a negotiator type person and try to work it that way. But what you did is fine. That's what you need to do. I think I have it written down. I think sometimes, well, I think we do a disservice to our fellow officials and even to the teams, like later on. And if we let some things like that slide, some uniforms, and then someone catches them later, or worse, they get in a district playoff situation and now a crew from York or Mid-Penn or something says, "Hey, you can't wear those headbands." I just don't think that looks so good. So, all right, good deal. Did that. Fashion police issues. Any question on all that stuff that you need to look for? All the illegal equipment, all that kind of stuff. If you have anything, like I said, if any of these, if you guys have any scenarios, something happened to you, say, "Hey, how would it," ask us how we would have handled it as far as communication.
Pat, are you a fashion police detective or a rookie when you're doing a junior high game? In the sense of
Great question. A lot of things, and I got to be honest with you, I'll backtrack to that story that I told you. It was the first game of the season with the headbands, and it was a varsity game. But I went over, and I don't know whether you would agree or disagree, but I went over to the coach and I said something. He said, "We don't have anything else. This is all I have. It's the first game of the season." Sometimes they'll use the line. I said, "Well, I'll check with the other coach and see if they're okay with it, but technically you shouldn't. But the next time I see you, you got to have those off." And that's being a negotiator. You don't have to do that. You can go by the letter of the law. And I don't know whether you got the rest of you say thumbs up, that's okay, Pat, or you'd say no, don't do that. Okay, junior high. Yeah, junior high. Sometimes they get whatever uniforms they get. So that's a great question. Typically, I'd go over to the coach and I'd say, "Hey, coach, by the letter of the law, if that was the same scenario, I said, by the letter of law, you can't wear those gold. It's got to be white, beige, black, predominant color uniform." I'd tell them that. And then I might leave them, I might say, I shouldn't say it with the headbands. I'd probably tell them they change them because they're not. But if the uniform, something's wrong with the uniform, they're slightly different or that, I might say to the coach, "Hey, that's not legal. That uniform's not legal." But sometimes they don't have the same jerseys. I don't know. To go back that, I would probably be pretty good about like the headband rule. I'd probably tell them, "Hey, you can't wear that type of headband." Again, if it was early in the season, sometimes I give them the first week and I'll say, "Hey, next time I see you, you can't have those on." But that's a slippery slope sometimes. All right. Did I sufficiently navigate your question there, or did I talk my way out of it?
No, I agree with you. I mean, junior high is. I was thinking of the shorts are always one in junior high.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to roll them up and see the tag, but junior high kids still have the shorts that we all probably liked, and now they all want to wear their shorts mid thigh, and so yeah, I think with that one. They're just getting whatever they have, and they're probably lucky if they have enough for them. So it's not. Yeah, I'm agree with you. I'm not usually a super big junior high stickler.
And I guess another thing I was thinking of too, I've seen sometimes where the kid forgot their shorts, so they're gray shorts or something. Yep. I mean, to me, that doesn't influence the game, or they're blue or something. And I'm like, I'd say something to the coach and say, by rule, you're not allowed, but this is junior high, so I'll let that one go.
Yep.
But if it was a big time, you couldn't do that. All right, moving right along here. These are all before the game communication. Again, over the table, I like to establish a rapport with the table. Introduce yourself if you're the referee. Try to get their names. Get the book squared away before the 10-minute mark. And I look through the book. What I'll do is I'll count the number of players, and I'll put the number and circle it at the bottom. And this, I saw somebody else do that. Check the numbers, check and to make sure there are hopefully no duplicate numbers, check both sides. I'll ask them if they have any questions on the book. Remind them that they're part of the officiating team. The official book would be the home book if they have any questions. I also remind them about warnings, because I've seen people look and not, if you administer a warning, if you go over to the book and coach and say, hey, there's a warning for delay, or there's a bench conduct warning, they should write those down in the book. And then the second warning for delay or the second warning for unsporting should be a technical foul. And if I wasn't smart enough to remember that, they should remind me.
Hey, Pat.
I also, yeah.
You said you count the players and write the number of players down. Why are you doing that? What's the significance of that number?
Great question. The reason I do it is so they can't, I don't know, somebody else told me this, and I don't know, I just got in the house. I just write the number at the bottom of the last player so they can't add anybody to the book after I've looked at it.
Okay.
I don't know that that's a great question. And like I said, somebody else did that. So that's a good idea. But I don't think that's protocol anywhere. And like I said, listen to what I had to say. And if you think it fits, do it. If not, don't do it.
Hey, Pat, in a junior high one, I would highly, especially if you look over and there's a junior high looking kid there, I would make sure they know varsity games you're going to run in as you get older. Or further along, you're going to run into good scorekeepers. At junior high, you're going to pray some days that they know what they're doing. So it's always a good question to ask, hey, especially early in the season. Is this your first time? Because those are usually, they change all the time.
Yeah. Good point, Jay. Good point. Okay.
How often are you given administrative technicals for,
one?
Oh yeah, but like how often does it occur? If you every season you're always running into some team somewhere, or is it sort of a rare thing?
To be in my career, and you guys, the rest of your addresses, I've seen it twice. Once they had a starter in the book listed as a starter, but that person wasn't going to start. Long story short, I guess I've seen three. Long story short, that person was a starter, but they missed the practice because they were sick, and the coach's philosophy was they couldn't start if they were sick. So, but he wouldn't change it. Or he said, no, she's not starting, this player's starting. And then we said, well, that's, I'll take the T. And I'm like, okay, your call. And then I had one, Thaddeus Stevens, I do the clock over there, and they had a person that was in, the coach wrote their scrimmage numbers in. So the number in the book was the wrong number. The foul was on 0. There was no 0 in the book. So that was the other one. And the third one was a coach. I think they had some issues, some injury issues. So they added, or some, no, they missed somebody in the book, and then they wanted to add them. And I said, well, don't add them until they're ready to go. If you want them in the game, if they're going to go in the game, the only way you can buy them in it is putting them in a book, is putting as an extra person, right? So that would be changing the book after the 10-minute mark. So I think those were the three I've seen. And I mean, it's been 20 some years that I've been doing. I have not seen them early. And the other thing was I was doing the book, and this was early in my career, and I waited. It was close to 10 minutes. So it's a little bit under 10 minutes. And then there was something the book wasn't completed. So the coach from the other team said, hey, it's under 10 minutes. That should be a technical foul. It's not completed. So from that point on, I said, well, I bit the bullet there. So now that's my fault. I came over here too late. So I always try to get over at 12. That way, if there's any issue, you can track people down. And then, by the letter of law, 10 minutes, the coach wanted to start the game with the T. And, you don't want to do that unless it's
right.
Totally not. How about you guys? How many administrative techs have you guys seen? Anybody want to address that?
I haven't seen many because, yes, I try to do the preventive officiating, go over at 12 minutes, check the books, do all that. It usually only occurs where late in the game in the second half, there's a sub that comes in, and then you hear the beep, beep, she's not in the book. And
Like, yeah. Yeah.
And then you got to do administrative technical, shoot 2 fouls, point interruption, you move on. And yeah.
I think both of mine were the scorekeeper who normally does the book were sick in the person. Same thing, the scenario you had, Pat. And I will tell you, they are probably the easiest things. You're the last person that they want to yell at for it. Like they yell at themselves,
Oh, yeah.
as the head coach. They yell at the bookkeeper. You're just, you have to come over, and it's like one of those ones you come over and you're like, oh, I got to deal with this one.
Yep. Good deal. All right. And I also, when I talk to the table, I say, hey, if there's anything wrong, buzz us. If something doesn't match up, you don't get a number, we don't give you the number. Something's not right, there's going to be a one-on-one or whatever, hit the buzzer and give us the information, and we decide or determine if there's any penalties that apply. And that's my table. That's it for the table. All right. And after that, I go back. So here I got another scenario. I'm standing there. You're at your alma mater. You're officiating at your alma mater. So there's a bunch of people know you there. So one of my buddies starts talking to me, and I'm standing out there and talking. They keep talking and talking. They're trying to have a conversation. All right. How do you handle that? And what do you say to that person?
I'll talk to people within for a reasonable time period, but cordial, but not arm around them and that type of thing. And then when I see that things have to get moving, I'll move that along relatively quickly and end that conversation, maybe with a handshake.
That's pretty good. That's almost a 3. That's about what I was going to say there. That's exactly what. And the other thing I just tell them, I say, hey, I got to do my job now. And exactly like you said with the handshake. Awesome. All right. I think the next thing I think is very, very important. It's the pregame coaches and captains meeting. And I think that's important because that's the first impression for the participants, for the coaches that you have. I always introduce my partners. I always tell them we're approachable. If you're respectful about anything going on, I address any rule changes. I don't know that the beads this year, I guess I'll talk about that a little bit, but I know the previous year when we got rid of the punch for a team control foul, the first couple games, I talked to all the coaches about that because I said to them, I'm thinking, you see this, every time you see that, that's a player control, the person with the ball. So remember now, I said this was changed, but that was last year. But I just use that as an example. So any rule changes like that, if there's anything special with the court, if the sideline, there's not enough room on the sideline, there should be a line 3 feet from the out of bounds. That becomes a temporary restraining line until the ball's thrown in. Things like that you need to talk about. I don't go about, this is just me. I don't go talking about which lines are out of bounds and that kind of stuff unless I'm asked about that question. Special court issue. Then you do your PIAA statement, and I'd have that. It's on the back of your card. I don't think it's in any of the rule books or the case book that we got, but it's in there, and you should either know that or read it off your hand. Wish everybody good luck, and then shake the assistants' hands and also wish them good luck. I think that's an important, again, communication, pregame type stuff. All right, let's see. Am I doing okay for time? Because I don't want to go over time here. Yeah. All right, unusual situations. What would you do here? You're out in the game, out on the floor before a game. There's a puddle of water just around half court, a little bit of water there. So you take a look at it, you go over, you have somebody clean it up, and you're standing there for pregame. 2 or 3 minutes later, there's another drop or 2 there. So go over and talk to the game management, and they've informed me that the roof was leaking. It has been repaired, but this is the first time it's rained since. So you have a very slow leak at half court. What are you going to do?
I'm not sure you can play that game. I mean, there's certain things you can do that you could just overlook, but if you've got water coming on the floor, I'm thinking that's a safety issue. And if you have a issue with a player that gets hurt or somebody, you could be in some trouble for that one.
Any argument? No,
the
I think
argument. I'm gonna lean on my partner, veteran partner, to guide the situation. But I totally agree with Bob. Anything close to any type of player safety concern, we need to err on the side of caution.
Yep, I agree, and that's what I told him. Here's the scenario. I went over there, so I went over and talked to the coach, and the coach was adamant about they don't want to travel down here again to play this game. They want to play it tonight. And then I went and talked to the home coach, and I talked to my partners. And I got to be honest with you, this is how we handle it. It was and I agree 100%. It was a very slow leak, so it wasn't, and it was a half court kind of off the playing court. So I asked them if it would be okay if we had somebody, the game manager would be there and take care of that. Like anytime the ball went by that spot, they went out and cleaned it. I told them if anybody, including me, slips, the game's over. If anyone's, getting the ball and that guy's out wiping up the spot and they're headed toward him, the whistle's blown, you get the ball out of bounds. So I mean, everybody agreed to that, and I agree with what you guys said. I mean, but I felt in that scenario, and I talked to my partners, that we could handle it and we'd play it by ear because the rain had been slowing down. It really wasn't. It was somewhat wet, but the number one issue, you're right, the number one thing is player safety and your safety. So when I walked over, I was anticipating them saying, yeah, we'll do it at another time. But then we negotiated and worked on it. So, all right, during the game, communication. And I think that ties in with.
Sorry, I just want to follow up
Go
on
ahead.
that. So I just, I'm assuming that, of course, with membership in this organization and so forth, there's, some type of insurance and coverage for us in case there's, any issues, complaints, anything after for, a player safety violation. Or is that something we're supposed to provide on our own?
That's a good question. Jay, do you know, do we have?
You are an independent contractor. The way it's defined, you're an independent contractor coming to school. Some people do have, I think, a supplemental insurance with it. I think in Pat's scenario, I'm sure they brought in the game manager and they had that discussion. And ultimately, the game manager for the school, you're giving your recommendation, but the game manager for the school probably is making that decision because they, we can just give information, but it's up to the school. But yeah, some people have, I know through the PIAA, you can get a supplemental insurance to go with it, but I don't know if there's too many people that do. I think you're just using your best judgment and your independent contractor, but I'd have to look and see on the PIAA's website what is given to officials. Let me look and see here what we're talking.
Yeah.
Hey, Jay, I'm sorry. I can jump in on that one at least from a football standpoint. We have no liability coverage on football. So if we allow a kid back on the field who is obviously concussed or something along those lines, we would have some liability towards that.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate that. And I don't know, sometimes I think nowadays, of course, you're covered with liability, but sometimes, you sign waivers and things and people can still question or sue you. All right. During the game, and I think that, like I said, ties in with game management. I think you got to look at your style, and your style, it might evolve or change as the game evolves. Sometimes your communication. And I thought the Philly ref, it was sort of interesting. I found it interesting. They said there's fighters or dictators. They're the official that's always right, no matter what. No matter what they say, whatever, they're going to get in a fight with the coach, or they're going to, be stronger. They're saying, I'm right. There's negotiators, which I think I fit in that category a little bit. You try to get them to work with you and the players. You try to be fair and open to things. And the third category was quitters. And those are the people that people talk to them, coaches ask questions, they don't say anything. And those aren't my categories. That was just in the one article I read. I thought it's sort of interesting. But I have been in situations where, like I said, I'm probably more of a negotiator, but there are times if things get chippy that you just got to go and say, okay, I'm going to be a dictator now. We're calling, we got to pick up, we got to call all these before things get out of control or out of hand. During the game with the players and coaches, it's mechanics. And Scott, again, thanks Scott Still. He did a great job with the mechanics. Proper mechanics, let your partners know what you have going on, let the players know, the coaches know, the table, the fans, what you have. Like Jay mentioned there, your whistle, make sure it's loud and crisp, and always test it before the game. When your whistle blows, your hand goes up, either open with a fist. And I think it's a good idea to have an extra whistle. I had two scenarios. I'll delve into one here. I was doing a junior high game where it was an away game, but the visiting team was Ephrata, where I teach. So the opening play, now I got there, it was kind of a hurry. I got there. So the opening play, there's a travel. I blow on my whistle, nothing comes out. So I'm going, hey, stop. I just had to yell. I didn't test my whistle, and I guess it, got clogged or something got in there. So I just had to, I just yelled to stop the play, to call it. And I said, that's a travel. And I, changed out my whistle and got another one. So it's always a good idea. Make sure you check your whistle before a game when you can, and always carry an extra with you. All right. And of course, since I taught at Ephrata, word got back to people at Ephrata. So I took a little bit of grief for my whistle not working on that play. Communication with your voice, try to be calm, confident, controlled, not always easy, loud and emphatic when you need to, when you really need to sell your calls. Initial jump ball. What do you need? Can anyone answer this? What do you need to check on the initial, before you start the game at the initial jump ball? What kind of communication? What do you, for 2 points?
I'm checking with my partners, one partner if it's 2-man, 2 for 3, and then also the clock operator and table to make sure everybody is ready to go.
All right, sounds good to me. And the other thing I do also is toot, usually give a toot on your whistle, and you can handle that the way you want. Point, white's going this way, blue's going that way. I do have one scenario here that, okay, what if you're walking out there, and as you're walking out to do the opening jump of a game, over the PA system, they say there's a red Chevy S10, your alarm is going off in your vehicle. And that happens to be your vehicle. How would you handle that?
I would quickly see if I could get one of the game administrators to take my keys and fix that for me while you keep the game moving.
Well, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Hey, I came all this way, and it was a pretty far road trip. I came all this way. We want to get the game going, but I'm thinking that's a long way to go, and if not, my battery's dead, I'm in trouble. So that's what I did. Now, the only thing I had, because my keys obviously weren't on me either, so I had to. I said, I'm walking in, and they made that announcement. I said, go over to your coach's benches. I went over to the table, and said, hey, that's my vehicle, and then I gave the keys to the game manager, and he took care of them. And I gave him a nice cold beverage for doing that. So moving right along. All right. And I did, jump ball. All right. Substitution, inbounds situation. What I'll always do is, we had this one game where ball was coming in on the baseline. Subs were coming in. I was working a JV game. I waved the subs in, ran all the way down, assuming that there was plenty of time, and this was early in my career, assuming there was plenty of time for the subs to get in and out. My partner he puts the ball in play. As soon as the ball's in play, coach for one team says, they have 6. And at that point, I said to myself, that's our fault. That's my fault. So from that point, I always count, and I'll have my hand up. I'll give you a stop sign whenever it's a substitution, out of bounds signal, and I'll be communicating with my hand up in the stop sign, and I'll count to make sure. If I've counted and I'm checked and I'm happy, I'll usually stick a thumbs up. And then I might be watching my players. I may not be looking at the person administering the ball. If I'm at the other end, if I'm doing the throw in after subs have been, I'm going to look at my partner, and I'm also going to count. I'm going to wait, make sure he's ready to go, either a thumbs up or he's dropped the stop sign.
Hey, Pat, do you generally count both teams, or does one partner count each team, or how do you handle that?
I think, and Heather, I saw you shaking your head. I think RV. I think referees supposed to always count visitors and umpire as far as players, pregame and all that stuff. But I count them both. I just do. Is that what you guys do? Yeah.
I count them both, so we make sure we're right.
Yeah.
If you're counting and I'm counting, we're both counting, and we're good.
Yeah. And there have been times where I had, 11 kids on the floor, and people are like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, and then you just yell at the coach, "Hey, you got 6."
Yeah, I'm aware.
Count. Okay. All right. Another scenario here. Ref in a basketball game. Trail official. Ball goes out of bounds. Partner blows the whistle, makes the call. Everybody in the stands moans. The coach is going a little bit crazy. And the person at the scorebook slams their fist on the table. And you are, as the trail, 90% sure he just pointed the wrong way. What are you going to do?
You're going to go over and stop the play, and then go over and talk to that fella quietly and discreetly. And if he's sure that's the play and he made the call, you're certainly not going to try to override him in that situation. But you can give him your opinion and hopefully come to an agreement without everybody in the whole gym knowing what you're talking about.
Okay, I like that. How about the bookkeeper slamming his fists on the table?
You're going to go over and hiss in his ear that he better never do that again.
Did you say piss or whisper? What did you
No,
say?
I said hiss like a snake. Hiss like a snake.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. And I had that exact scenario. And one of my partners went over and talked to the guy on the table and reminded him they're part of the officiating crew. Correct. So they can't, even if it's wrong. And I did go to my partner. I said, "Hey, partner, what do you got there?" And he's like, "Man, I don't know. I just freaking froze. I don't know. I really have no idea." And I was like, "Well, I'm 90% sure all those people that were moaning and this, I think they were right." He said, "Okay, then I'll change it." But I think the key thing is, at least for me too, is like you said, which was perfect. Let that person change their call, because they might have there might have been a hit after what I saw, or they might have seen something different. So it's always, to me, let that person change their call. And again, if you would have what you would consider pretty definite knowledge. Like I wouldn't change it unless I have definite knowledge. All right, let's talk about just real foul shooting, foul situations with shots. I'm always, everything should be, verbal and visually saying how, 2 shots, 1-on-1. And make sure, I always look around if I'm working with 3 people or 2, I'm always making sure we both have 2 shots up, and I'll wait until, they have the 2 up and we have eye contact and we're ready to put that foul shot in play. All right, another situation here. All right, I'm the trail. I blow the whistle. And this is one I observed. I wasn't involved in it. My son was playing. Blow the whistle. The lead also blows the whistle. It was a kind of a post-up move. Post player got the ball, makes a move to the basket. There was contact, and the trail went up with a fist and went right to the back of the head. The lead went up with a fist, and then went down like a block, but then dropped it. Okay. So what do you do in that situation? How do you communicate through that for 2 points?
I would just, if you get a double whistle, just freeze for a second or 2, and kind of go with primary coverage area. I'm not quite sure how the positioning was on the court there, but if it's the lead's primary coverage area, I let him make the call and just hold any signals till yeah, keep your arm up, but just let your lead official go with the call.
Okay. I think the key thing is that we talked about communication. There's visual communication with your eyes, and also like mirroring that call if you're going to defer to them. If you feel you need to talk to them, you can always get together and talk. And really in that situation, I thought the lead dropped his signal. But what actually happened in the game, which drove me crazy, the trail that made the call, player control, went down and talked to the lead, and they talked for maybe 10, 15 seconds, maybe a little longer than that. Then he went over to the table, recorded a foul, the player control foul. Then he came back to his position, but then he went down, kind of hesitated for a second, then went down to the lead and talked to the lead again for another 10, 15 seconds. And then he had the lead go over and then call a block. So they had a blarge. Yeah, Heather, I was like, and that's what they did. I was like, and the thing that drove me crazy, it took a minute. And I'm thinking, just, one of you sell the call or make a quick decision. And that's why I say, like, don't have gaming interrupters. Hopefully, make a quick decision to the best of your ability and move on. That might be some kind of rule interpretation or correctable error or something like that. You don't want to interrupt the game like that. And it really looked stinky. Another thing to do is signal each other, when you have 16 fouls, like look at the clock and give each other, hey, next one's going to be a one-on-one. So that's a nonverbal, another one a nonverbal. Foul out situations. Table tells you it's the 5th. Tell the coach, then go back to your table and start the clock. They have 15 seconds to replace that, and there should be a horn right away at 15, and then 15 seconds later, the second horn for that official, or for the substitute to be in. Then go tell the players. I believe that's going to be the other thing I leave open there in our pregame. I always talk, if there's something, if you had a conflict with a coach, I always open up the door and give the ability. I've never used it, but I always say, hey, Jay, that guy, him and I, we were just really having problems. I can't tell. If I tell him it's the 5th, he's going to go off on me. Can you go over and tell him it's the 5th foul? And I always leave that door open as far as communication if you think it's going to be a real issue or a real problem. Preventative officiating. Again, I think this is what you want to do, how much you want to do talking to players, how much it's your call, it's your game. Make sure the proximity, you're close enough that they can hear you. You can do it during stoppages of play if you see stuff that's going on. And I found it's really highly effective. Like, I'll tell players, I'm watching you. And I'll yell at them. I'll say, I'm watching, especially post-up play if they're banging or pushing a little bit. And then if there's a dead ball situation, I'll go up and tell them, hey, you guys, you can go to contact, but you can't displace the person. If you push that person out of the way, it's going to be a foul. And I think I do a decent amount of preventative officiating, communicating with the kids, because again, I think I'm that negotiator type person. I'd rather talk them out of a 3-second or an illegal screen where they're leaning, or the hands, hands. We talk about the hand check, point of emphasis, that type of things. And the only thing I have to say is you have to follow up on those things. If you tell them once, do you tell them twice? Do you do it a third? No. I mean, you got to decide. And there's nothing wrong with blowing the whistle. I mean, you don't have to say, hey, watch the 3. You can blow and call the 3, and that'll teach them to get out of there. Addressing coaches and players' questions. Like I said, when time allows, they want to be heard. If you're running by a coach and let them know, hey, next time out, next stoppage, I'll talk to you next time. It can't be on every call. I think I attached at the bottom here, there's 3 articles. One was a video on that where the one guy talks about communicating with the coaches and, when's too much and when's not enough. And same with the players. Because I always tell players in pre-games, you have questions, I'll do my best to address those issues. All right. Scenario, you're officiating. Coaches, we have patient whistles. Coaches anticipating every call. Calling travel, that's a travel. That's a foul. That's out of bounds. That's this. All right. And they're kind of doing that before you. And now the coach and the other team, I think it's getting a little bit thinking, well, this guy's making all the calls. Maybe I need to start chirping about calls and making calls. How do you handle that?
That's a great opportunity to use the warning.
Good. And like I said, for these, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but yes, that's a good warning. The one thing I've used, and I don't know, it seems to work. I've said, hey, coach, can you let me make the calls? You keep doing this. I try to get on time and be subtle and be in proximity and say, hey, coach, you're making all these calls. This guy down there now, he's starting to call travels. You can't, I try to be negotiator first, but there's nothing wrong with doing that warning thing. That's fine. Good. I have, and right down there, I wrote like canned responses from the rule book. The rules. It's easier. Then you can say, hey, you didn't have legal guarding position, or you can say things that are clues to the coach. They were leaning in. He had the hand on. He hit. It was a hand check. He hit him with the second time. That type of thing. Also, talking with coaches, and I think like Josh Bolpe mentioned this. Make sure you listen. And I always try to listen. And with my partners and with coaches, I'll ask them, so what did you see? Some of them will tell it's a travel. That was a travel. Then I like to, especially with officials, because I think we're a little better. Exactly what did you see? Why was it a travel? What did they do? Well, they lifted their pivot foot and then put it down, before, that's a travel. Okay, that makes sense. But sometimes it's hard. I think it's hard to communicate with coaches because they just tell you what they think they saw. But I will go.
I think you can diffuse coaches too. Like I'll have a coach talking to me from behind and I'll tell him, coach, let's get through this. I'll talk to you then. And then turn and actually look at them, not let them talk to the back of your head all night, but turn and exactly what you just said. I'll say to a coach, hey coach, tell me what you're seeing out there and we can go from there.
Good. And I think, it's like my fellow officials, it's like those. And sometimes I'll listen to what you say you saw, and I'll tell you what I thought I saw. And then we just got to agree to disagree. Maybe we didn't quite, see the same thing. But your scenario, if that's what you saw, then that was the right call. My scenario was a little different. It'd be a little bit different call. And at the end of the day, none of us are perfect. I never played a perfect game. I never coached a perfect game. I never officiated. If I ever do, I'm going to quit. So I might be around too long here. All right. And again, piggybacking on that coach, once you give that coach, my daughter played, and this was a college game, and they gave the coach the stop sign and said, that's enough. And I was curious because this coach was chirping and chirping. And son of a gun, I was really surprised. Like a minute or two later, again, that coach was chirping, kind of chirping at him. I was surprised they didn't, once you, and that's the thing, like Dave said, right? Was that you, Dave? Did you say about the warning? Yeah. The thing is too, once you give a warning, once you give that stop sign and that warning, you can put that warning in the book too. You can kind of negotiate with them if they're not yelling and screaming. Once it's in the book, then the next time you got to act on it. I don't think you can, you can't, you just got to act on it. You've gone to that part. Issues, and again, that's your decision, your call. Issues with players and coaches. When do you draw the line? When's enough? Another thing with the coaches too, talking to coaches, if I tell preventative officiating, if I tell a player something, I categorize that and try to keep it here. And then when I have an opportunity to tell a coach, sometimes during fouls and things, you get an opportunity. I'll go over there and I'll say, hey coach, I was talking to 22 on their screens. They're leaning in a little bit, something like that. So the coach knows, because I know sometimes coach will say, hey, what'd that guy say to you? So I think that's a good management issue, a good communication thing. And I think if the players sometimes are misbehaving, the good coaches will actually take care of it for you. All right. Man, I'm getting close on time here. Jane, had a situation. I won't ask you guys, but I will. Okay. Your partner makes a call. A couple people are just, they don't really like it. There's a timeout. A couple guys are standing up and they're pointing their fingers at your fellow official, and they're like blah, 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 all over them, yelling as the timeout's going on. What do you do?
Pat, are you talking about fans or people that are
Yes,
participating?
sorry. I'm talking about fans. Fans in the stands, and they're up and they're booing that call and they're saying, you stink, no bench personnel, it was fans.
Pat, what gym are we in? Are we in Northern Lebanon or Conestoga Valley?
uh,
I'm not sure you can cross that. You can do anything about that unless they cross that line where it's time for them to be ejected. If they start to get ugly or profane or whatever, but I don't know that you can necessarily address a fan until they cross a specific line.
okay. Anybody else want to handle it? Oh, Heather wants a point. You only got 1 point, Heather.
Oh, man. No, I would say, yeah, you're right with the fans, unless it's really bad, get game management. But I would go over to my fellow official and just check on them. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? If you made the right call, tell them that was absolutely the right call. Because you never know what their tolerance level is with fans, and they might let those fans get under their skin. And if that happens, then you've lost them for the game. So I would just go over and make sure your fellow official's okay, or just talk to them, tell them a joke, get them laughing, let them ignore the fans, just make sure they're okay and their head's still in the game.
So that brings up an interesting point, because one of the reasons I have not gotten involved in basketball in the past is because of the proximity to the people 2 feet behind you when you're inbounding a ball. How do you all deal with that? Because that's a little bit of a concern to me.
I think it's, to Heather's point, it's thick skin. In a game, you can kind of, be cognizant, yes, the ball's supposed to go inbounds right on that sideline. You can bump it up a little bit away from a sound of people. You can go to the base end line or anything like that. Same thing to like Heather's point. If we're at a, Pat says, hey, we have a bad call. The fans aren't happy, and Heather's in front of the student section or the fans and aren't happy. If we have a timeout, even though that's where Heather's supposed to be, I might go over and say, hey, Heather, switch sides here on the timeout, or hey, Heather, can you go over and check the book to see how many timeouts they have left or something like that. I think, anything you can do to as Heather says, make sure you're taking care of your partner. And 2-person, that's a lot. I've had that happen where, especially with the younger, they just get down on themselves. Half the calls we make, half the people are going to like. Every call we make, half the people are going to like you, half the people are going to hate you. So I think that's, to your point, Bob. I've just kind of grown with that. Like, hey, half the people, they didn't see what I saw, and and I think 2 minutes later, you make a call the other way, and they're going to be the first people off the sidelines cheering, and the other end's going to be pissed at you. So, I think I've come to the realization I can't make anyone happy, and I just move on.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Thick skin. The other thing is, too, if you can get the ball in play, if you can get things going, then you're in and going. Now, the situation that I described, I actually went to game management because there was 2 people that were, they were just up the whole time out and like pointing at the guy. So I went over to game management. I said, hey, can you get over there and just tell those people if they want to, can you deal with it? But it was one of those guys I knew they're good. They'll take care of it. It's one of the guys that they'll take care of it. But then they started booing me. I went over and I talked to her, and she was like looking, she kind of pointed at the people up there, and I was like, yeah. And then they started booing even more. They were mad at me.
My game was at Lebanon. I don't know if you guys have problems at Lebanon, but I made a call in a game, which was to me, it was the right call. And, the fans were going crazy. And I just stood there and I was like, yeah, go ahead, yell. By now, I'm like, I don't care, say what you want. When I went back and watched the video, this fan came running down the stands and stood behind me and pointing and yelling at me. Of course, I didn't see it because it was behind me, but I was like, oh my goodness, like I didn't know that was happening. So that's another thing. Like if my partners, which of course it was behind us, and my partners are looking at the benches, but I was hoping game management would have seen that, because if he would have came down and at least touched me or come on the floor or something, I'm hoping game management would have taken care of that. But you got to ignore it, or you just go with it and laugh like, oh, that's what they're saying about me tonight. Okay, great. And you just, let it roll off your shoulders.
Hey, what do you want to go? Should I go real quick here? It's 8 o'clock. Do you want to keep recording and people can just drop off if they want, or what do you want to?
Yeah, we can keep recording if anyone needs to hop off. Yeah. But yeah,
Okay.
we'll be here.
All right. And here's one. Please don't do this. True story. So I'm at a gym, fast break, 2-on-1 fast break coming down. I'm right in front of the coach where the 2-on-1 fast break is. Whistle blows. My partner goes, "That's enough," and points to a person in the stand and gave a person in the stand the warning. So now, what do you think the coach is saying to me? I'm standing right in front of the coach. And I'm like, "Well, coach, we could line them up in a 2-on-1 fast break again and I could blow the whistle and start from there." Please don't, like, any of that fan stuff. That's got to be during a dead ball. If that makes sense, because that scenario was just totally unacceptable. All right. The other thing, you said some great things, like down here at part 3 there, I'd say fellow officials, check in with your fellow officials during the game. Like, I like working with these, people give you thumbs up and we'll smile. And it's nice with 3-person because it's a little different. Like the C and the lead can kind of look at each other, nod head and say, "Hey, we're doing okay," or thumbs up. Or the other thing is, when you get breaks, feel free, you're putting the ball in bounds and somebody's on the block during a timeout, talk to them, touch base, pat them on the back. I have down here, "Hey, is there anything we need to look for? What do you see? Is there anything?" And I'll bring up and say specific plays. "Hey, we got to watch so-and-so doing this." I'll let them know, like Heather said, if somebody make a good call and I hear people booing, if we're passing like in a 2-person, we're doing the switch, I'll tell them, "Hey, that's a good call." Because we need to support each other, because like Jay was saying, half the people don't like us all the time, which is cool. Good call. And it can be nonverbal. Oh, another thing I like that some of my fellow officials do is like some kind of have a signal, like point your head or like something like that, to try to say, "Hey, categorize, remember that," because that's something we want to talk about. I don't know if you get to that point in your career, or that's always a good thing if there's a specific something that you wanted to talk about or ask exactly what they saw. End of the half with the shot, and Cooney reminded me of this. Usually, I think with 1 minute left, we put the one finger up, and I'll try to keep it up so my partner knows. And we should always be aware of the clock so my partner knows, and score and fouls and that type of stuff. 1 minute up. Then usually we get down to 15 seconds or so, like a hand on the chest by the person who's going to call the last shot, because obviously you don't want to get in a scenario where one person's saying good and the other person's waving the shot off. At halftime, just relax and discuss the game, the good, bad, and the ugly, I call it. Specific input. I'll ask my partners on a specific play. I might say, "Hey, try to remember that play." If you have any game management issues or anticipating anything, that's a good time to come up with a plan. Like, figure, okay, how are we going to handle? We're having a little bit of situation with somebody. What's our next step? How are we going to handle it? Okay. And that's about takes me out the end there. After the game there, I always try to thank the game management, especially if the job is well done. Appreciate what they do. I know in district games, I always send an email out and thank them. We have to do a little bit more communication on the district level, and I always thank them for their hospitality. Always debrief and discuss the game. If there's anything, we all make mistakes, and sometimes we know it. And unfortunately, I don't believe in makeup calls. Sometimes that's the toughest thing as an athlete or participant. If you made a mistake, you can always go out there and hustle and make a play. If somehow you booted a call or blew a call, you can't really do a makeup on that. You just got to focus on the next play, make corrections in your mind. Anytime you make a mistake, make the corrections in your mind and move on. And it's always good to maybe make a pit stop with your partners if you got along, or even to catch a ride with them too. If you're going to the same place, it's nice to, catch a ride. I know when we do district games, a lot of times you run together. Sometimes, obviously, that's not always possible when you're coming from junior high games. Like I said there, Dan, remember, we're all human. I already said that. Never played a perfect game. All right. Last question here. What's the score? You have a recap of the score?
Up home, we got Bob's got 9, Dave's got 3, Brent has 2, and Nate has 2. Bob's getting
Heather
some
get-
ice cream.
I thought
What?
Heather got a point.
Heather had some in there.
Heather has a point.
Yeah.
Unless you're off on a Rock and Jock 25-point one here on the last one.
I don't think I should do that. All right.
I think you
Here's-
should do
here's
that if
the
the answer's
scenario.
exceptional.
What's that?
I think you should
Well-
offer that if it's an exceptional answer.
Okay, we'll all vote on that. We all have to agree on that, though. That's exceptional. How's that sound? All right, here's my last one. Had this scenario happen. And let me preface it by saying I'm a coach. So, and I coach football, and sometimes, football, we have, things happen. And as a coach, I always want to know, okay, what was the call? What did my kid do? How can I fit? That's the way I look at it. And I think it helps being on the side of officiating. So I always want to learn so I can teach them things. Anyhow, so here's my 2 really close block charge calls. Could have went either way. So I've talked to the coach on the first one, the second one, and he's questioning my call. And I said, during the foul, it was a shooting foul. And I said, Coach, the defender had legal guarding position. They were both player control, so we weren't shooting. My bad. They were both close calls. The defender had legal guarding position. Your player hit him in the torso. And then he goes, but they were moving. And I was like, well, they can move. The rule book says legal guarding position, and you can move laterally or obliquely as long as it's not a shot. You have to have that position in the shot. I said, they can move. And then he told me I'm wrong. He said, you're wrong. And then play went the other way. How do you handle that?
Oh, I mean, if you know the rule, you're not wrong. I mean, you can escalate it and argue with him, or you could just move on with it and say, just move on with the rest of the game, because there's nothing to say. You answer questions. You don't answer statements is the way that I would approach that.
I think that's a good answer. Well worth 2, maybe 2.5. Yeah. Now you have that experience with football. You do football too, right?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. And that's exactly the way. At that point, I thought, okay, I'm kind of done here because. But the one thing I did, and I don't know, in my old age, and I think of myself as a coach, so I reached out to the AD and got his email, and I sent the coach, I sent him the quote in the rule book, because I'm thinking, I don't know, I just had to do that because he said I was wrong, and I know I'm not wrong. I'm usually pretty good with the rules. I'm high 90s on the rules by this time in my career, and judgment, that's a different thing. If he would have questioned my judgment, I can understand. But to me, he didn't know the rules, so I want him to know the rules. So I sent him I actually got in touch with him and sent him that rule. And that, I'm not sure that helped or hurt, because then he sent me the clips and we kind of got into an escalation. I said something to Cooney and included Coon and Tom Eberly in there to make sure I was saying the right things, because I wanted to clear it up. I felt like we were in the right, and I wanted to make it clear up the situation. So, but things worked out. So, all right. Do you guys have any questions or anything to add, or any scenarios, things that happened to you in games that we didn't get close to? And I hope I addressed communication there to some degree. I thought I went into a little bit of specifics about specific scenarios, but I thought I have this extra ice cream. It might be expired, but thought I'd use that to entice people to answer. Anything, anybody? Hey, thanks for your responses. You guys are on top of it. You're way ahead of me when I was just starting. I know that.
Yeah.
Heather?
Well, the only thing I just wanted to add is that when you're out there on the court, just remember that your partner is your best friend. So anytime you blow your whistle, look to your partner, tell your partner what you have, communicate with them. That's the most important thing, because no matter what happens, your partner can help you. I get in a game and stuff happens, I got a foul and then I'm doing whatever. And then, oh crap, I lost the number. Well, your partner knows what's going on because you looked at them and said, I got a foul on blue. And then you look away and they know what's going on. So just remember, when you're out there on the court, Your partner's your best friend. Communicate with them everything. Even look at them and say, I got to walk ball here, or I got to foul. Just do it with them and it'll make your game go smoother.
It's your only friend.
Yeah.
It's your only friend. It's the only person on your team. Well, thank you guys all for hopping on. I think Pat did a great job. I think there's so much communication during game, verbal, nonverbal, with coaches, players. I'm a big one of find the player on the court that you can talk to. Each team has a couple of kids that might get a little out of control, but there's one person that they listen to, and might not be the captain. I know a lot of times it's not the captain. And so I make sure, pay attention early to who is the one who is kind of the person who's controlling it. And I'll say to them, hey, you deal with 22 before I have to. And they go over right away and deal with them. They know which kids on their team are the ones on the fringe and are going to do something stupid. Let them do that before you have to step in. And that's something I've learned over the years. And to Pat's point, at the beginning, when we do the captains one, I'll answer any question from anyone as long as they do it respectfully. And I'm a talker out there. Like, learn to talk with your whistle in your mouth. That is a big thing when you're out there. If you can have a conversation, especially to Pat's point, like your post play, I talk nonstop, hands off, keep them in, keep moving through, whatever it is, just to be preventive the whole time.
And to piggyback on that, in my pregame, when I just pull the captains after the coaches have left, I'll tell them, I'll say, hey, you know your players better than me. If you got somebody on your team that gets a little excited, take it upon yourself to calm them down before we have to, which piggybacks in with exactly what you said.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.